Ever wonder what it really takes to build a business and a life that feels like yours? Welcome to That Big CEO Energy. I'm Callie, entrepreneur, operations whiz, and your go-to for the real, raw, and unfiltered side of business and life. Hey, welcome back to the show. I want to just preface this by saying that there may be some trigger warnings. This is a big CEO energy conversation about bariatric surgery, identity, discipline, sort of rebuilding your life. So I also want to set the tone for what this episode is not. This episode is not about numbers. It is not about how to lose weight. It's not about toxic transformation culture. It's really about identity, self-leadership, and what happens when you decide to fight for your life differently. So, as some of you know, or that I have expressed in other places on social media, I had bariatric surgery in November, and about the time that you are listening to this, I would have hit my goal weight. And so I've spent some time sort of reflecting on what has actually changed, and dare I say that the biggest changes weren't physical. And the changes that were physical, yes, were very much impactful. But when I was younger, I have always been, or always had been, a bigger individual. My mom was the same. And so I grew up in a household that, as most of you know, my mom had remarried. And so through that, I always joke around, but it's kind of a joke coping mechanism, I guess you could say. But I grew up in a trailer park. Right? That's what my mom could afford. She was a single mom. We lived in a trailer park. And so she met this man who happened to live in the trailer next to her, who also had 2 children. And they ended up getting married, and we bought a house here in town and moved there. And right before we moved to the house, that was also the time that my mom was reconnecting with some of her family because, as some of you probably, I don't know if I've mentioned this before or not, so I'll just mention it here, but my mom and my dad, my biological dad, were adopted. So my mom was able to track down both sides of her family and reconnect with some of her half siblings that she had, and so on and so forth. And so right before, I must have been 7. Yeah, I was 7. Right before we moved into the house, I was experiencing some physical abuse by my uncle, which would have been my mom's half brother. And not only that, but my older half sister or stepsister was experiencing the same thing by him. And so through my childhood, I had turned to food for comfort because that's the only thing that I knew to do. And while I was a very active child, I played sports, I rode horses, I was doing all the things, but I was also using food as a vehicle for comforting me through the things that were happening behind closed doors. And so I realized very quickly, sort of as I became a mom, as I became a young adult. I also got pregnant at the age of 19 and had my daughter when I was 20. And so I was a young mom, and I was raising a daughter. And when she got to the point of going to therapy, I also decided that that would be a wonderful thing for me to do. And man, yes, but also it had opened a lot of childhood wounds. And so I was processing through those. I was realizing that all during my childhood, all during, all the way up until sort of this point that I decided to do the work in therapy, that I literally was surviving instead of living. And my energy level was matching the same thing. I was purely surviving. And so at that point, by the time I reached therapy, which Daniela was a freshman in high school, so it would have been 2020. So man, 6 years ago now. That seems wild and crazy, you guys. 2021, 2020. No, she was 8th grade in 2020. Sorry, so 2021. So 5 years ago. I didn't realize how much I was literally surviving. And I like to put it as this, where I had boxes, right, of things that I had neatly wrapped them, I had put a bow on them, and I had put them in my mental closet, and the door was being shut. And so as long as they were wrapped up, they were kept in the closet, I didn't have to address them because life had moved on, right? Like, why do I need to bring these things up? And I realized that through working with my wonderful therapist, that I didn't realize how much I was suppressing. By the time I had married Christopher, in 2020, I had already been married twice before. I was definitely unhealed, right? And Daniela had also gone through some very deep mental battles. And so again, I was just like using food. And then what do you do when you get into like a happy relationship? And we live, right, in such a society, and this is not an excuse, this is just a fact. But we live in a society that utilizes food as places of comfort. So like every function that you go to has food, right? Whether that's a wedding, a baby shower, anything happy really has like some sort of dessert or some sort of something. And same thing with when you are in sorrow, right? Like you always have a luncheon after a funeral. So like all of the things, whether it was positive or negative, were always associated with food. And so same was true in my life. And so when I married Christopher, obviously, like they say that you put on the marital 10 pounds, and I did. And at that time, like I was also going through figuring out some I would say it was like autoimmune, issues and other things that I was battling through physically. And so same was true on his end. And, I will also share that he got bariatric surgery, and that is his story to tell. He got it in December, so 1 month after me. And so, right, life just leading up to this point of going to therapy was just a mirage of just eating my feelings, whether I was happy, whether I was sad, whether I was protecting myself from things that were either happening or had happened before. It was just the way that it was. And so I literally was surviving instead of actually living. And my energy level was just depleted. And not only I didn't want to move my body, I didn't want to fuel it with good food. The mobility that I had was less than. And I think I realized that when I had torn my ACL in January of 2024, October of 2024, when I had surgery in January of 25, I had a little bit of a come to Jesus moment. Like, I can't keep doing this, because recovery, as much as it was easeful because I had a lot of muscle, it also was very, very hard mentally. It was very, very hard with being mobile. And so, ironically enough, I continued to pack on weight after that. And ultimately, as we know, women with libido issues can be super sensitive to that happening. And so there was a component of marriage, of myself, that was struggling inside of this container of a shell I was living in that I didn't recognize. And just the emotional weight of carrying the extra weight that I had was just, it was a little bit of an out-of-body experience. And I realized that when my husband and I, again, like I've mentioned in episode 174, like, my husband and I have some of the best conversations when we are just driving aimlessly, or even when we're driving to somewhere. And that particular day, I wasn't, like, weight loss surgery had never really been on my mind. Matter of fact, I said that I didn't want to have it because I had 2 aunts that had it. One aunt was unsuccessful for other reasons, and my mom had went through that. And as much as it was a benefit to her, there were also other things mentally that I felt like should have been taken care of. And so I don't know if, like, I didn't trust myself enough, that, like, I had done so much work inside of therapy that I was quote unquote ready. But anyway, so we're driving to actually go get a saddle, because I'm going to try my hand at showing my horse for whatever reason. And so we're driving to get the saddle, and he says to me, I've been thinking about bariatric surgery. And I just, like, I froze, because I sidewined, like, and we usually we usually tee each other up pretty well before we, like, mention something random, like, we'll say random incoming, or, whatever. Nope, not this time, which I'm grateful for. And I said, oh gosh, okay. So, like, he explains what his thoughts are and all of the things. And I said, okay, well, I guess let's call our health insurance and see what needs to be done. And I think for a moment, maybe, I don't know, we'll have to ask him. I feel like I need to have him on the podcast soon, but I feel like maybe he was anticipating me saying, like, oh no, I don't want to do that, or something, but I didn't. I was like, like, it was this quick moment of, I think, the Holy Spirit being so involved in our conversations that it was right to the beeline of, Callie, you can't keep living like this. And I think this was the moment that I realized that we both wanted something different for ourselves, which is number one priority, but for the family that we are building. And I was constantly exhausted. Like, I would wake up exhausted. I would try to go to the gym. I would try, right? And what happened was I couldn't lead well inside of my business or any other container that I was being a part of, because I was constantly exhausted. And I think we miss the point often where we know that our business can only grow to the level that your body and your nervous system can sustain. And I didn't have energy for that, right? Like, I was literally doing the bare minimum. And I think entrepreneurs oftentimes normalize burnout and neglecting themselves because our business is doing so well, right? And the reality is I had spent years building businesses while abandoning my own body. And I want to talk a little bit about the expectation versus the reality of surgery, because surgery is a tool. It is not some magical divine intervention that while you're under, right, our good Lord comes in and goes oogly boogly like you're all fixed. That is not. People that say that surgery is the easy way out just make me want to vomit, and I never understood it until I got it. But if you know, you know. It's the same thing with a GLP-1. Like, can we stop berating these people that choose to use a tool, whether or not your projections and your feelings think that it is not supposed to be allowed or whatever? They're utilizing a tool. We're utilizing a tool. It is not a magic wand. It is not the easy way out. Matter of fact, I would argue that it is exceptionally hard, especially since even in the time that I have been recovering from surgery, and this first 6 months has been crazy in the sense that I have discovered vitamin deficiencies. I have discovered what I can and can't eat now, what my body will and won't tolerate, right? Like, you have all of these things that it is just as hard to do nothing as it is to utilize a tool. And so I just want to set the clear expectation here that there will be no shame. There will be no talk about what you should or should not do. This is just my lived experience. And so I had often thought that if I got this tool, that I was going to promise myself that from day one of coming out of the surgery, the reality was going to be that I was going to follow the directions of my care team to a T, because number one, I'm a rule follower. Number two, I wasn't going to do all of this for absolutely nothing. And when people think that it is some magical thing that is happening and it is going to cure all of their problems, that's where they get into trouble. And I had that lived experience from other people inside of my family that had the surgery, that I feel like they thought that it was just going to cure everything. And had I not had the years of therapy to preclude what was going to happen, rest assured, I can tell you that I probably too would have thought that it was going to be a magic out. And so nobody talks enough about the mental side of this surgery, both the expectations and the reality. So the expectation on the mental side for me was, I knew that through all of the work of therapy that my physical body was the last thing, because of all of the trauma, and I could get into the things that were said to me from this person that had done awful things to me, to make it to where I didn't feel like I was allowed to live in a different body, if that makes sense. I'm trying to say a whole lot without saying a whole lot, because if there are little ears, there are little ears. So knowing what I knew then, and the way that I had perceived my body up until this point, and up until working through therapy, I knew that this that this physical change was something that my mental side also needed, because it was ready. It was ready to forgive myself, and it was ready to get rid of everything that I knew before. And as much as that, you could say to somebody like, oh, well, then you still need to do work in therapy because you're beautiful, no matter what, and all the things. And, like, my husband loves me no matter what, just bar none. Like, my husband thinks I'm like the coolest person on the face of the planet. And I think my husband is like the most handsome guy on the face of the planet. Like, we have that adoring love for each other. And he's literally chased after me since I was 12 years old, right? Like, I want for no love in my life because I receive it. And I know that some people are not as lucky. So please hear me when I say that is not a chip that I'm wearing on my shoulder, that if you do not feel that way from people that are inside of your life, I am so incredibly sorry. But I felt that, but I didn't feel it within myself. And so as you go through sort of this prep for surgery, right? So we have the conversation, we talk to our health insurance, and the health insurance said, well, there's 2 places in the state of Michigan that we will approve you to go. One is the Hurley Bariatric Center, which that's the one we ended up in. And then the other one was like down by Detroit, which is like farther away. And like, when you think about it, you're like, I'm not driving that far for all of the appointments and all the things. Like, an hour for us was far enough. And I'm so grateful that we did. So you go in, you have to work with a dietitian for three appointments, which is like 3 months. So we started this process in July. And you also have to get a psych evaluation and some of the other things. And so I knew that like I would pass the psych evaluation because of my extensive therapy background, and I was super comfortable on I knew that if I needed therapy coming out of this, that I was going to be super vocal about it. If I had gotten too low with feelings of my body, that I made a promise to myself and to my care team that I would reach out to my previous therapist and we would work together to address it. Super grateful that I have not been in a place that I have had to deal or come back to that. But that was a promise that I needed to make to myself first, but then to everybody else around me, because it's very sensitive, and this procedure can cause a lot of dysmorphia, both physically when you look at yourself, mentally when you are shifting your body and things are changing. And so there was a lot of talk through the preliminary, prior surgery or before surgery of, this is how we're going to handle this and blah, blah, blah. Let me just share with you that our care team was absolutely incredible. There were clear expectations. They talked about the good, they talked about the bad, they talked about the very ugly, they talked about the expectations and the reality of before surgery, after surgery, how to handle it. And it was very clear on what needed to be done before they would clear for you to have surgery. So we go through all of that. I have surgery November 17th, and it was very hard. Very hard. But I will share with you that if you've ever had a C-section, physically, you will be fine. Like, C-section mamas are just a different type of mom. And so that is like that type of abdominal surgery, if you will. And so physically after surgery, I was okay. And one of the things that I started to grieve was food, but not in the way that we would expect. I grieved food in the sense of I was grieving the part of me that was attaching myself to those food items. And what's interesting to me is as I began to open up my palate of what I was able to eat, I would try some of the foods that previously I would eat, and they just didn't taste good. And I firmly believe that was God, that was the Holy Spirit removing that from me for obvious reasons. Of like, you don't have to go back there. You are just fine where you are. You can relearn new habits. You can relearn the emotional coping skills. You can realize how much life had revolved around the comfort and convenience of these items, but that we've shifted. Now we've moved into a different identity. And when I think about kind of like how we are set up for life, no one could do the work for me, right? Like I had to consciously make the decision that this was something worth fighting for, but also it was something worth losing. My past self and my thoughts about myself, my belief systems that I had attached, my food systems that I had attached, it was okay to let those go. That I didn't need them because I had this new identity. And I think that systems only work if you work them. And that's about anything. That's about your business. That is about who you are. If you don't have a good system and you don't know how to work the system, it's not going to work. But tools don't save you, right? The consistency changes me. I had to realize that this surgery had changed my stomach, but it didn't change my mindset for me. I still had to do the work coming out of the surgery and before the surgery, and even today, to be able to set myself up for success and not go back. And one of the things that I had decided was that I had to be disciplined enough and trust myself enough and keep my word to myself. That if I had decided to do this thing, that from today moving forward, I was gonna trust myself enough to keep my word, keep my promises to myself. Right? Follow the plan when the motivation disappeared. Small, consistent choices every day, just being disciplined. And I worked out almost every day, and I still work out, right? Like I still move my body, but it is right now in the way that I want to move it. It's not because I was before surgery when I would show up to the gym and shame myself into lifting weights because I thought this is how you change your body. But when I made small, consistent choices and started to rebuild the trust within myself, right? And realizing that discipline is self-respect. Like when you can, motivation will always leave. It always leaves. But your confidence gets built in the self-trust and the self-respect that you create through discipline. And so the same woman that follows through in her health is the same woman that follows through in her business. And when my decision making improved with the choices that I was making with food and moving my body after surgery, it actually started to improve my decision making within my business, which has been like the most incredible eye-opening thing. And I've become less emotional, I think, with decision making. Whereas before, like all of my food choices and everything were driven by like how I'm feeling. If I'm feeling super low, I always turn to food, right? And so I still have low days, don't get me wrong, but I'm less emotional about it. It is, okay, what am I feeling? Am I feeling sad? I need to talk to someone about that. I need to vocalize that I am sad. I need to journal about it. I need to go for a walk. I need to clear my head. I no longer am going to the pantry to find whatever it is. And when I started to back off being how emotional I was with eating, I realized that this food that I'm consuming, whatever it is about fueling my body. Do I eat things for enjoyment? Absolutely. Like I love little pieces of chocolate that we got from the chocolate factory at the, over in the other town. I love them. But I can eat one piece and be like, oh my gosh, like that's the perfect amount and move on, right? So there's this less emotional decision making that happens, but also more consistent decision making and more self-leadership and confidence and trusting who I am and the decisions that I'm making, both with who I am as an individual, with my food choices, with my business, right? Like it all falls into one. But confidence wasn't built when I hit my goal. It was built every time I kept my word to myself. Every time, every day that I have shown up for myself for the past 6 months, it was built when I showed up. And weight loss doesn't secure you overnight. It doesn't heal insecurities automatically, right? It doesn't fix relationships. It doesn't create happiness overnight. You still have emotional work to do, right? Like there was a time where I wasn't super confident, even during my weight loss, and people still say to me all the time, oh my gosh, you look so great. And the amount of things that change when you lose weight and the way that people perceive you is so astounding. And sometimes not in a good way. I'm just going to throw that out there. Because, like, can we just stop commenting on people's bodies? But that's a whole other topic for another day. But I still had emotional work to do because for a hot minute, I didn't believe that this could happen to me. I didn't believe that I could actually go through with something like this. And it actually had nothing to do with how I looked. It's really weird. And I'm going to try and explain it as best I can. When I look in the mirror, I don't see 260-pound Callie. I don't. I see the person that I am today. I see her as 165 pounds. But I also still see how non-confident I was that I could actually change my life and it be good. And I think for me, that's the saddest revelation that I've had is I didn't believe that I could give myself such a wonderful gift and have it turn out okay. Because I had spent my life watching everybody around me, including myself, either have things taken away or also not have the belief that they could do something. And so when you have that ingrained in you, it's a little bit of an awe that you stand and go, yeah, like I did this. I also did this with support, right? Like my husband is an incredible support system. And I know 1000% I could not do this without him and his support. Could I have done it? Yes. Would it have taken longer? Yes. But would I have called the insurance if I didn't have him in my back corner also wanting to change his life? Probably not. I probably would have set that down for another day, another time, because I'm too busy, right? We're always too busy. But I just, I stand in awe sometimes of golly, girl, you did it. You actually followed through. You did something that you said that could not be done. And you thought that it was for everybody else except for you. And I still have to work on that sometimes. But it lessens. Because I see things differently now. I'm learning to be seen differently now. Which is a whole other, ball game. But, I have loose skin. I do. I have flappy arms. They're not, super flappy. But, I'm not... I went from so self-conscious. I would tug at my shirt every time, and I don't do that anymore. I just feel good. And I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. I'm saying that because achievement doesn't automatically heal you, right? I didn't magically get to my goal weight of 165 pounds and be like, ta-da, I'm healed, guys. Ta-da. That's not going to happen. In the same fashion that achievements in our business or achievements in our life, they don't heal you automatically, right? Revenue goals won't fix your self-worth either. Success without internal work still feels empty. And so I'm so grateful that I have a support system that I can audibly say, this is bothering me. And gosh dang, I did that. I'm a whole different person. And it's crazy. But I realized quickly that shrinking my body didn't automatically quiet my mind. And there's a grief that no one talks about. There's grieving this old version of you where people saw you as who you were, and they were used to that. And so now it's a little bit strange when people say to me oh my gosh, you look so good. And at first I thought to myself, well, I looked fine before. But they also could see the desperation in my face, right? And I think the old part of me that I grieved was the old part of me that thought she had to hang on to old childhood wounds, that had to hang on because what if she forgot? And she didn't forget. She doesn't forget. She remembers. She remembers the pain. She remembers the good times. Right? But that was a version of me that no longer exists. And that version of me doesn't have to follow me either. But there's this fear of changing. What if I don't like the body that I'm in? Right? That was an actual fear of I don't know what it feels like to feel good in your body. I don't know what it feels like to love yourself. There was a fear there. Because what if I arrive, right? This was an audible fear. What if I arrive at this number, 165, and I don't like it? And the reality is I love it. But there's also this fear of outgrowing people, right? There is a difference that happens when you don't have good, solid friendships, when you don't have good, solid relationships. There is audible and non-audible thing that happens where people outgrow other people. And it's usually because if you are the person that is changing your life in such a radically different way, whether it is weight loss surgery or not, right? Just across the board. If you are waking up one day and you're saying, you know what, I am going to hard beeline it to the left and I'm going to make some changes. Sometimes that means that you're outgrowing people. And it is because they have developed a version of you inside of their brain that when you start to make these shifts, you no longer fit the box that they have put you in. And that's okay. And I had a fear of outgrowing people. But I've realized that that fear is the devil talking. Because if those people, whoever they are, I haven't had this experience of somebody coming to me and being like, oh, you're skinny now and I don't like you. I haven't had that. Like, all the people that I have in my life now are beautiful souls and are so encouraging. And I just, yes. But what I also realized is that is a legitimate fear that people have. And I also realized that some coping mechanisms that I had before kept me safe. Like this isolation of not doing anything. It kept me safe, yes, but it also gave me a fear of not wanting to try anything new. And I also think that there's this grief of mourning the years that I lost to being in survival mode. You know, I spent many years as being a mom, of having to care for someone inside of my household. You know, she's 20 now. She's fully sufficient, which even saying 20 right now audibly is a little bit weird. But there were many years of being a single mom. There were many years of just life circumstances that I had to be in survival mode, right? Where I literally had to become numb to myself so that I could get through life. Sometimes you mourn those years because you were safe inside of yourself. And now, like, you've physically, you've mentally, you've emotionally shed it. Like I've shed this old part of me, that this growth part of me also required a loss. And I recognize that. And it's the same is true in other parts of our lives. Again, whether or not you get or have a life-changing, situation as far as like losing weight. It can also apply to business, but growth requires a loss. And every new level requires releasing an old identity, an old thought, an old way of being that we were used to. And it also has an emotional side of the transformation that you're going through. But even the version of me that was struggling deserved compassion. And how this surgery has literally impacted my life has been incredible. And I'm just going to run through these quickly, but one is more energy. Gosh, do I have more energy? Oh my gosh. It is just like, I wake up and life is lifing, like I have such a zest for life. And yes, I get tired. Like, I'm still a person, but I just have more energy and I move my body differently. And it is just like, I tell people all the time, I feel like I'm 25, which is incredible. But I also have better clarity on what it is that I like, what it is I enjoy, what it is that I want to be doing. And I also have better boundaries with people. And I also have more confidence showing up publicly. Like, I do not have a problem being on camera anymore. I do not have a problem, like going to events and things. There were times that, like, I didn't even want to go to the grocery store, you guys, because I didn't want to be out in public. I would do grocery pickup all the time. And I'm like, okay, like I'm fine with being out in public now. But I also have more intentional scheduling of things. So, like, for instance, I am able to prioritize my day more efficiently because I'm not so foggy brained. I'm not just like sort of fumbling through every day. Like, I'm able to be more intentional with my time and my calendar and give myself more space. But there's also more awareness around the stress that I have and the nervous system regulation that takes place. And when I am feeling super strong, I know that I lead differently and I have better decision making and I'm more sustainable, right? But I'm also no longer building my business out of self-destruction. And I think one of the biggest revelations that I have had through this whole entire thing is I have stopped building my business at the expense of myself. I've stopped hiding. I've stopped wanting to hide. But there are a few things that I would say to this version of me that I had before surgery, which is being more compassionate with the circumstances that I went through in my life, with all of the things that I was sort of grieving, and having this gratitude, but also acknowledge like how hard it was, right? Like, reassuring the little girl inside of me that like change was possible, and reminding me that I wasn't lazy or broken. I had just really lost my way. And what this whole entire journey has taught me about life is small decisions compound. And healing is just like this very layered thing. And your body matters. The way that you take care of it, the way that you show up matters. But it's also shaped by the habits. And your future is shaped by them too. And you deserve to feel good in your life. And I never thought that I would be able to say that to myself. Like, I deserve to feel good in all facets of my life, in my business, in my marriage, in who I am as a person, in who I am physically, emotionally, right? Like, transformation is also not one big moment. It is these little repeated choices that we keep making day after day after day after day. So even if you're not like a bariatric patient, everybody has something that they're avoiding, right? Everybody has areas that require sort of this self-leadership and development, and everyone has patterns that they need to interrupt in their life. And for me, this journey was never about becoming smaller. It was actually about becoming more present in my own life and feeling more alive and more intentional and more connected to myself. The greatest transformation wasn't the weight that I lost. It was finally learning how to stop abandoning myself.